Hi and welcome to Danklord vs. Games. My name is Kevin and today we'll be taking a look at Hand of Fate 2, which is a game I unfortunately never looked into before. The game itself is quite a unique one when it comes to its gameplay. Let me try to explain how the game works and why I enjoyed my time with it. When you start off the game, you'll be quite confused as to what's going on. In my opinion, the developers didn't really put any effort into explaining the game itself while I was playing. I felt like I was back in the 90s looking for the user manual that never came. After playing what I assume was a tutorial of some sort, you end up choosing a character and some minor traits like which type of insignia you're wearing and what color you want on your armor, as well as your gender. It was a bit like choosing an origin story for your character, but in a much more stripped down version, as you ultimately have no clue of what impact your choices has on the game itself. You are then presented with a large map with several missions to choose from. You can get a gold or a silver rating depending on if you succeed to complete the optional tasks or not. Getting gold basically means you've unlocked every card that specific mission has to offer. Silver means you completed the main task but lacked in some optional objectives. Optional objectives, which by the way isn't all too easy to complete. It all adds to replayability but at the same time frustration if you're the type of person who doesn't enjoy repeating missions. The game itself is based on cards, which all has different values and outcomes. When you fail a challenge or get ambushed by stepping on a bad card, you'll get sent into combat that feels quite odd to begin with, but trust me, it grows on you eventually. I've heard that the first game was somewhat lacking in its simplistic form of combat, and I'm hesitant to say that it's different this time around, but there was a sentence that came to mind quite often while playing. It's not perfect, but it's good enough. You'll smash the attack and press certain buttons based on what the enemy does. You parry green attacks and roll away from red. Simple as that. It became an issue being a Dark Souls fanatic. I expect to be able to roll away from anything, but if you roll and the game wants you to parry, you'll most likely be hit even though you swore you were fast on your reaction time. That means that the combat sort of becomes a dance of monotony that soon takes over any other present feeling, and you'll ultimately be dreading having to deal with combat altogether. Another issue was the varied iframes, invincibility frames. Sometimes you end up unscathed through your animations, sometimes not, and the fluctuation got on my nerves. It felt unpolished and somewhat randomized, but again, it's a minor complaint. It all works as long as you go along with the rules of combat, and any complaint I had vanished after that realization. The cards are supposed to represent a tile in a dungeon, and you slowly but surely try and make your way out alive. Every move to an undiscovered card costs 1 food and heals you up a little bit. You almost always need to make sure you have enough food to last the mission, and you do that by adding certain cards that you have in your possession into your loadout, or by purchasing food in the dungeon by various different ways. Before starting a mission, you're able to choose a loadout depending on the criteria of that specific mission. Your loadout contains the companion you want to bring, what cards you want randomized across the board, as well as picking your starting items and general equipment. You see, choosing weapons and armors that are far superior to others doesn't necessarily mean you're going to find them anytime soon, as it's all randomized behind shops, skill-based encounters, and regular mob encounters. Even cards that yield resources of any kind, like food, are locked behind the fact that you have to complete an event successfully to gain those resources. Not to mention that you actually have to stumble on that specific card while in the dungeon to begin with. A specific mission I have in mind is the one called Strength. You start with 10 health out of 100, and food doesn't heal you up at any point during the mission. The optional objectives have you try and gather 60 defense, and the result is almost always completely based off of your luck finding all the pieces of items before you land on the last card. I need to find a helm, a chest piece, and a shield with good enough base stats, and then I get the chance to upgrade one piece of item one at a time for each level of the dungeon. If I already upgraded my helm and my chest, but I haven't found the shield with high enough base stats, I won't get 60, maybe 55, but never 60, and that bothered me a lot, because who the hell enjoys stopping by the finish line and never being able to cross because of RNG? However, the game tries to motivate the player to try other missions in a non-linear fashion to gain more cards that might help you in previous missions, but there is no obvious sense that the card you just unlocked are of any use in other missions. Why? Because the card, although unlocked, needs to be used and discovered in a dungeon for the traits to become known. If you don't explore all the cards available to you, you'll find that most cards are presented with a question mark and are literally of no use unless you either check the card over the internet or have previous knowledge. It's a little bit of a hit and miss scenario that encourages trial and error just a little bit too much at the cost of your sanity. Fortunately, there is quite a diverse group of items that all have their respective strengths and weaknesses. My only complaint is the damn unskippable cutscene that has to start each time you equip a new type of weapon or a shield. It's not the end of the world, but it definitely gets on your nerves after a few hours of playing, knowing that you already somewhat hate the combat. If you played Darkest Dungeons, chances are you're going to enjoy this game for its hardcore, but not too hardcore mentality. I just know it's not the same voice actor narrating the two games, but they definitely strike me as very similar and inspired by one another. They both do a fantastic job setting the tone for the game as you play, and you'll come to both hate and love the narrator for the things he says and the amount of times he laughs in your face. If you for some reason doubt the fact that he's a great voice actor, look at his IMDb page. He's voicing for Battlefront 2, Mass Effect 3, Diablo 3, Skyrim, God of War 3, and much more. One of my main issues are the fact that there are just a little too many instances where you feel that the game relies a little too much on RNG, while at the same time trying to convince you that the game is all skill-based. Throwing a dice could probably boil down to skill, but in my mind it's all RNG, as you have no choice but to accept the outcome if you fail after re-rolling once or twice. Cards with success or failure are shuffled around and can be somewhat tracked with the naked eye, but this too feels more random than anything else. I don't know how many times I failed picking the right card, even though I only had a 25% risk of failure. The only time I felt skilled played a major part was in combat and trying to nail those goddamn pendulum events. Last but not least, skill is obviously involved when it comes to knowledge of picking the right cards to start off with. As a final note, I want to mention that the game is made in Unity and is a perfect example of how good games can be in such a widely available engine. Due to its availability, we've seen quite a few games that just aren't worth your time and effort, but I can assure you that this game is. If you're into board games or dungeon crawlers with strategy attached, this is going to be right up your alley, despite having quite a few quirks with both the gameplay and camera perspective. The game hates you and laughs in your face, but I keep coming back for more. It's simply the craft of a devil, and I can't wait to see what it comes up with next.
What an unfortunate time for your skills to leave you.
That is all, and I want to thank you all for taking the time to watch this video, and a huge thanks to all the latest subscribers. Jesus, I'm getting close to 100 subs, and I can only thank you guys for that. Yeah, my cat is making a lot of noise. I think this might be the last video I make this year, but we'll see. If you have any suggestions of game you want me to check out, just put it in the comment below and I'll see what I can do. I hope you all have a good year and a good day now. Bye.